40,000 feet above the Atlantic, the CEO who destroyed careers felt his daughter's body go limp. Panic ripped through first class as he screamed for help. A woman from economy pushed past the curtain, steady hands, cold eyes. Their gazes locked, and he froze. It was her. The nurse he'd fired and humiliated 3 years ago. Now, she was the only one who could save his child's life. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I'll be giving you another story just as wild as this one. Now, back to our story. Silence. Not the peaceful kind, the terrifying kind that happens when a 2-year-old stops moving mid-flight. Clinton Voss, CEO of Voss Industries, and the man who'd negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions across 3 continents, felt his daughter's body go slack in his arms. Aria's fingers released her pink, stuffed bunny. The toy hit the first-class carpet with a muffled thump. Her head lolled back, eyes rolling white. 40,000 feet above the Atlantic, and the most powerful man in the cabin couldn't save his own child. "Aria!" Clinton's voice cracked, a sound he'd never produced in boardrooms or hostile takeovers. 2 hours into the Boston to London flight, and his autistic daughter had been handling the cabin noise better than he'd expected. She'd colored in her book, hummed to herself, fidgeted with her bunny's ears. Then she went limp. A flight attendant rushed over, her practiced smile evaporating when she saw the toddler draped across Clinton's lap. Aria's chest barely moved. Her pink dress clung to her skin, damp with sweat. The color drained from her face like water circling a drain. "Sir, what happened?" "I don't know." Clinton's hands shook as he patted Aria's cheeks, trying to wake her. She was fine, then she just... His throat closed around the words. The attendant grabbed the intercom. "We need medical assistance in first class immediately. If there's a doctor on board, please identify yourself." Clinton pressed his palm against Aria's ribcage, feeling for movement he didn't understand. He'd fired 1,000-person divisions without hesitation, stared down competitors until they folded, built an empire on calculated ruthlessness. But holding his daughter's unresponsive body turned him into someone he didn't recognize, someone small and useless. "Breathe, baby. Please breathe." He shook her, gentle at first, then harder, desperation overriding instinct. Around him, first-class passengers craned their necks. Phones emerged from pockets. A woman, 3 rows back, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. 2 men in business suits half stood, then sat back down, useless. "Someone help!" Clinton shouted at no one and everyone. "Please, someone!" From row 23 in economy, Selina Ward heard a father's voice shatter. She'd been half asleep against the window, trying to rest before the London Pediatric Neurology Conference that had drained her savings and maxed 2 credit cards. The thin curtain separating economy from first class couldn't muffle that particular sound. Raw parental terror, the kind that bypassed every social barrier and triggered immediate response. Selina's eyes opened. 12 years working pediatric neurology and autism intervention had trained her to recognize that tone. A child was in crisis. She unbuckled and stood, her body moving before her mind caught up. Passengers around her barely looked up from their screens. The cabin smelled like recycled air and instant coffee. Her knees ached from the cramped seat. None of that mattered. A flight attendant intercepted her at the curtain. "Ma'am, return to your seat. There's a child in medical distress." Selina's voice carried the authority of someone who'd talked down 100 emergencies. "I'm a pediatric nurse." The attendant's eyes swept over Selina's faded Howard University sweatshirt and worn jeans. Her expression shifted, doubt creeping into professional politeness. First class is restricted. That child doesn't care which cabin I paid for. Selena pushed past, her pulse steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. She'd navigated worse gatekeepers. First class looked like controlled chaos. Clinton Voss, and Selena recognized him immediately, though 3 years had passed since he'd signed her termination papers without looking her in the eye, clutched his daughter like she was disintegrating in his hands. His tailored charcoal suit was rumpled, his silk tie yanked loose, his face the color of old newspaper. "Lay her flat," someone suggested. "Check her pulse," another voice added. "Google says—" A third passenger fumbled with their phone. Useless. All of them. "I'm a pediatric nurse." Selena's voice cut through the noise like a scalpel through skin. "Let me see her." Clinton's head snapped up. Their eyes met. Recognition hit him in waves. Confusion, then shock, then something darker. Shame, maybe. Fear, definitely. All of it buried under the immediate horror of watching his daughter fade. "You," he whispered. "Hand her to me." Selena extended her arms, her hands steady. "Now." Clinton froze. Here was Selena Ward, the woman whose entire department he'd eliminated during restructuring, who'd warned him that gutting pediatric healthcare programs would cost more than money, who'd walked out of his office 3 years ago with her career in ashes. Now she stood in front of him, asking him to trust her with the only thing in the world he couldn't afford to lose. Desperation crushed pride. He surrendered Arya into Selena's hands. The cabin held its breath. Selena cradled the toddler with precision, tilting Arya's head back to open her airway. Her fingers found the carotid pulse point, thready, rapid, but there. She watched the child's chest, counting respirations. 15 seconds of assessment that felt like an hour. "Seizure episode," Selena said, her voice clinical and calm. "Triggered by sensory overload and altitude pressure. How long unresponsive?" 2 minutes, maybe 3. Clinton's voice broke. "Seizure history." Her pediatrician mentioned risk factors because of her autism, but we've never... Was she overstimulated before this? Hands over ears, rocking, distressed. Clinton's face crumpled. "She was fussy. I thought she was being difficult. I didn't realize." Selena had already moved on, supporting Arya's head, whispering in tones too low for others to hear, while her eyes tracked every micro-response in the child's face. "Cold, compress, and water," she told the flight attendant. "Clear this area. Everyone back." People obeyed instantly. Clinton hovered, powerless, watching this woman he'd called expendable, whose expertise he'd reduced to a line item he could delete, become the only barrier between his daughter and disaster. Then Selena did something that froze every passenger within eyeshot. She began humming, low, rhythmic, barely audible, while applying pressure points along Arya's jaw and behind her tiny ears. Techniques that wouldn't appear in any standard first aid manual. Specialized knowledge from years working with autistic children in crisis. Methods she'd developed in underfunded community clinics after Voss Industries had discarded her. 20 seconds, 30. Arya's eyelids fluttered. "That's it, sweetheart," Selena murmured. "Come back." The toddler's body tensed, released. Her eyes cracked open, unfocused, then gradually aware. She drew a shallow breath, then another. A weak sound escaped her throat. The most beautiful sound Clinton had ever heard. Relief rippled through first class. Someone clapped, others joined, scattered applause that Selena ignored completely. She kept monitoring Arya's pupils, checking for secondary seizures, adjusting the child's position. She stabilized, not safe yet. She needs calm and continuous monitoring until we land." Clinton exhaled, his legs threatening to give out. "Thank you. God, thank you. I can't. Save it." Selina's tone could have flash-frozen the cabin. "I did this for her, not you." The words hit Clinton like a physical blow. Around them, passengers shifted, sensing blood in the water. This wasn't just medical drama. This was something deeper, uglier, more personal. Arya, still weak and disoriented, turned her face into Selina's shoulder. Her small fist gripped the fabric of the sweatshirt, seeking safety. Clinton reached for his daughter. Arya whimpered and burrowed deeper into Selina. "Moving her now could trigger another episode," Selina said flatly. "She stays with me until she's fully regulated." Not a suggestion, a statement of fact, Clinton, stripped of every advantage he'd ever leveraged, nodded. The flight attendant who'd blocked Selina minutes earlier now hovered anxiously. "We can move you both to first-class seats. I'm comfortable where I am." Selina paused. "He can sit beside us if he keeps quiet and doesn't agitate her." So Clinton Voss, architect of a multi-billion-dollar empire, found himself being escorted into economy class, squeezed into a middle seat next to the woman whose career he'd destroyed, watching her hold the daughter he'd almost killed through ignorance. "Quick question before we go further. If someone ruined your life, then desperately needed your help years later, would you walk away or step up?" Comment your answer and subscribe. This gets more intense. For the next 20 minutes, Selina worked with focused intensity. She regulated Arya's breathing with gentle pressure on her back. She created a sensory buffer using a blanket and the dimmed overhead light. She whispered calming scripts specifically calibrated for autistic nervous systems in overdrive. Clinton watched his daughter respond to Selina in ways she never had with him. "How did you know?" he finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. Selina didn't look at him. "This was my job before you decided my expertise was redundant to company objectives." She quoted his exact termination letter phrasing, and each word carved pieces out of Clinton. "Selina, I don't." She met his eyes, and the controlled fury there made him shrink. "You eliminated the pediatric healthcare division because it saved you $2.3 million annually. You called it strategic optimization. Want to know what I call it?" Clinton's throat closed. 40 children who lost specialized care access. 3 years rebuilding from wreckage. Nights wondering if I'd ever practice again. Her voice stayed level, but her jaw clenched. "And the reason your daughter nearly died today, because you never valued what I could have taught you about managing her condition." The accusation hung between them, sharp and undeniable. Nearby, passengers pretended to sleep while absorbing every syllable. This had evolved beyond medical emergency into public reckoning. Clinton opened his mouth, closed it. What defense existed for decisions made in boardrooms where human cost became spreadsheet adjustments? Arya stirred, making a soft noise. Selina's anger vanished behind professional focus instantly, but Clinton had seen the depth of it, felt its edges. "She's improving," Selina said quietly, color returning, respiration normalizing. "Teach me." The words escaped before Clinton could cage them. "Show me what you're doing." Selina studied him, weighing something behind her dark eyes. "Why would I?" "Because I can't help my own daughter." The admission gutted him. His voice splintered. "Because I'm terrified this happens again when you're not here, because," he swallowed against the tightness in his throat, "because you were right about everything, and I was catastrophically wrong." Not enough. They both knew it wasn't enough, but it cracked the door. Selina's expression didn't soften, but she gave one sharp nod. "Pay attention." For the next hour, Selena became a teacher. She showed Clinton how to recognize Arya's pre-seizure indicators, how to position her safely, how to use pressure points that calmed overloaded nervous systems, how to modulate his voice in frequencies that penetrated autistic sensory processing. Clinton absorbed every word like a drowning man gulping air, asking questions, his usual commanding presence replaced by desperate humility. Arya, nestled between them, gradually relaxed. Her breathing deepened. Her grip on Selena's sweatshirt loosened. Then the plane hit turbulence. Not gentle bumps, violent, lurching drops that rattled overhead bins and sent phones clattering into aisles. The seatbelt sign chimed urgently, a harsh electronic shriek. Arya's eyes flew open, panic flooding her small face. The shaking plane, the sudden noise, the sensory assault. Too much. She went rigid in Selena's arms. "No," Clinton breathed, recognizing the signs Selena had just taught him. "She's seizing again." "Not if I have anything to say about it." Selena's voice went hard with determination, but this time was different. Arya's system was already traumatized, fragile, barely holding together. The turbulence kept coming in waves, each jolt pushing the toddler closer to collapse. Selena deployed every technique in her arsenal, but Arya's little body fought her, overwhelmed and shutting down. "Stay with me, baby girl," Selena whispered urgently. "Stay here." The plane dropped sickeningly. Arya released a thin, keening wail that Clinton would hear in nightmares for the rest of his life. Selena made a split-second decision. She pressed Arya against Clinton's chest and positioned his arms around his daughter in a specific hold. "Support her head here. Feel my hand placement? Firm pressure. Now hum. Deepen your chest so she feels the vibration." "I can't." "Yes, you can. She needs her father's heartbeat. She needs to know you're protecting her." Selena's voice was forged steel. "Do it." Clinton obeyed, humming a melody he didn't consciously choose, something from his own childhood, his mother's voice decades buried. His hands cradled Arya with newfound confidence following Selena's exact positioning. Slowly, impossibly, Arya began to settle. The turbulence continued, but Arya's breathing steadied against her father's chest. She turned her face into him, seeking shelter in his heartbeat. Selena kept her hands on both of them, monitoring to micro-adjusting, guiding Clinton through corrections measured in millimeters. They worked in tandem now, no longer adversaries but partners in the singular mission of keeping this child safe. When the turbulence finally passed, Arya was asleep. Truly asleep, not unconscious. Her small body relaxed and secure. Clinton looked at Selena with something approaching awe. "You saved her life. Twice." "We saved her life," Selena corrected quietly. "You anchored the last part." The words hung in the space between them, an offering neither had expected. Team Selena or Team Clinton? Vote below. This story's about to shift hard. But to understand how a cutthroat CEO and a fired nurse ended up miles above the Atlantic, working together to save a toddler's life, we need to rewind. Back to 3 years earlier, when their worlds first collided in a conference room, where Selena Ward learned exactly how little human life was worth in Clinton Voss's empire. 3 hours remained until landing. Selena sat in the cramped economy seat with Arya curled against her chest, the toddler's breathing finally settling into a steady rhythm. Clinton occupied the middle seat, his expensive suit jacket folded awkwardly on his lap, his 6'2" frame contorted into a space designed for someone half his size. He looked ridiculous, diminished. For the first time in 3 years, Selena felt a flicker of satisfaction watching Clinton Voss experience discomfort he couldn't pay his way out of. "Her heart rate's stabilizing," Selena said, her fingers resting lightly on Arya's wrist. She'd been monitoring the pulse for the past 10 minutes, tracking the gradual deceleration from panic-driven tachycardia to something approaching normal for a traumatized toddler. But she'll need neuroassessment when we land. This wasn't her first seizure, I can tell from the response patterns. Clinton's jaw clenched. How can you tell? Her recovery time. The way her muscles released after the episode. Children having their first seizure take longer to regulate. Selena adjusted the blanket around Arya's shoulders, creating a cocoon that blocked the overhead lights. She's had these before. You just didn't recognize them. The accusation landed clean. Her pediatrician mentioned absent seizures, Clinton admitted, his voice tight. Brief ones. He said to watch for them, but I thought... He stopped, unable to finish. You thought you'd know one when you saw it. Selena's tone carried no sympathy. Most people do. Then their child collapses, and they realize how little they actually understood. Across the aisle, a woman in her 50s leaned toward her husband, whispering behind her hand. Selena caught fragments. Fired her. Can you imagine? Karma. Word had spread through economy. Passengers craned their necks, pretending to stretch while stealing glances at the unfolding drama. A teenage girl 2 rows back filmed discreetly on her phone until her mother swatted it down. Clinton noticed. His face flushed, but he said nothing. Why did you get on this flight? Selena asked abruptly. A man like you doesn't fly commercial unless something went wrong. Clinton's throat worked. My private jet's undergoing maintenance. Catherine, my wife, is already in London. I thought I could handle Arya alone for one flight. Where's Catherine now? At a medical conference. She's a neurologist. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. She wanted to postpone, stay with Arya, but I insisted she go. I told her I was perfectly capable of caring for your autistic daughter on a transatlantic flight without understanding her condition. Selena finished the thought with surgical precision. How's that working out? Clinton flinched. Arya stirred against Selena's chest, making a soft, distressed sound. Immediately, Selena shifted position, tilting the child at a 30-degree angle to reduce pressure on her diaphragm. She hummed, different melody than before, lower frequency, matching Arya's current heart rate. The toddler settled. Clinton watched, transfixed, as Selena performed adjustments he couldn't begin to name. You're good at this, he said quietly. I was trained to be. Selena's eyes stayed on Arya. Remember? The question opened a door Clinton had kept locked for 3 years. The conference room on the 42nd floor of Voss Industries had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. Selena remembered the view. Crystalline water, sailboats cutting white lines through blue, the kind of scenery that made corporate bloodletting feel almost beautiful. She'd sat in an ergonomic chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, surrounded by 11 colleagues from the Pediatric Healthcare Initiative. All of them specialists. All of them staring at the man standing at the head of the table with a presentation remote in his hand. Clinton Voss. 40 years old, suit sharp enough to cut glass, expression carved from granite. I'll be direct, he'd said, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone who made billion-dollar decisions before lunch. The Pediatric Healthcare Initiative is being discontinued effective immediately. Silence had crashed through the room like a physical force. Selena's supervisor, Yolanda Chen, half rose from her seat. Clinton, we discussed this. The program serves over 200 children annually, at a cost of $2.3 million. Clinton clicked to the next slide, a spreadsheet with numbers highlighted in red. The ROI doesn't justify continued investment. We're restructuring to focus on revenue-generating divisions. These are children, Selena had said, her voice cutting through the shocked murmurs. "You can't measure their value in ROI." Clinton's eyes had shifted to her, cold, evaluating. "Miss Ward, is it?" "Selina Ward, lead pediatric care coordinator." She'd stood, her hands pressed flat against the glossy table to keep them from shaking. "I've spent 4 years building intervention programs for children with autism, epilepsy, developmental delays. We've created protocols that are being adopted by clinics across 3 states. You're not just shutting down a division, you're abandoning children who have no other options." "I understand this is emotional," Clinton had said, his tone suggesting he understood nothing of the sort. "But business requires difficult choices. The healthcare initiative operates at a significant loss. Redirecting those resources to profitable sectors benefits the company and, by extension, all employees." "Except the ones you're firing," Selina had countered. "Repositioning," Clinton corrected. "We'll provide generous severance packages and references. You can't reference away 4 years of specialized work." Selina's voice had risen despite her efforts to control it. "The children in our programs need continuity of care. Some of them are finally making breakthroughs after months of intervention. If you cut funding now, you're sentencing them to regression that could take years to recover from." Clinton had set down the remote. "Ms. Ward, I respect your passion, but passion doesn't pay operating costs. This decision is final." "Then let it be on your conscience," Selina had said, her voice dropping to something harder, sharper. "When those children lose access to care, when their families are left scrambling for resources that don't exist, when preventable crises become emergencies, remember that you chose profit margins over their lives." The room had gone silent. Clinton's expression hadn't changed. "This meeting is concluded. HR will contact you regarding your transition timeline." He'd walked out without looking back. Selina had stood in that conference room, surrounded by colleagues fighting tears, staring at the spreadsheet still projected on the screen. $2.3 million. That's what 40 children's specialized care was worth to Clinton Voss, less than the cost of his private jet's annual maintenance. "I remember what you said." Clinton's voice pulled Selina back to the cramped economy cabin. "About it being on my conscience." Selina said nothing. "You were right." He swallowed, his throat working visibly. "I didn't think about those children after that meeting. I signed the termination papers, redirected the budget, moved on to the next quarter. It was just business." "Just business," Selina echoed, her tone acidic. "Aria was born 8 months later." Clinton's voice cracked. "Premature, complications. Catherine and I spent weeks in the NICU watching her fight for every breath. When she was diagnosed with autism at 18 months, I finally understood what you'd tried to tell me. Understanding doesn't undo damage." "No," Clinton agreed. "It doesn't." Aria shifted in Selina's arms, her small hand gripping the fabric of the sweatshirt. Even asleep, the toddler sought security in Selina's hold rather than her father's presence. Clinton noticed. Pain flickered across his face. "After I left Voss Industries, I spent 2 months applying for positions," Selina said quietly. "Nobody wanted a specialist from a discontinued program. I was overqualified for entry-level work, underexperienced for leadership roles. Your generous severance package ran out. I burned through savings. I considered leaving healthcare entirely." "What stopped you?" "A community clinic in Dorchester, underfunded, overwhelmed, desperate for anyone with pediatric neurology experience. They couldn't pay me half what I'd earned at your company, but they gave me access to children who needed exactly the expertise you'd called expendable." Selina looked down at Aria, her expression softening despite herself. I spent 3 years in that clinic. No fancy equipment, no corporate backing, just determination and children who deserved better than the system was giving them. I developed the techniques I used on your daughter today because I had to. We couldn't afford specialized medical devices, so I learned to work with what I had: my hands, my voice, my understanding of how autistic nervous systems process trauma. She met Clinton's eyes. Every skill that saved Aria's life today, I learned it after you fired me, in the wreckage you created. The words settled between them like stones. Around them, passengers had stopped pretending not to listen. A man in a Red Sox cap nodded slowly. The woman across the aisle wiped her eyes. The teenage girl who'd been filming earlier now watched with rapt attention, her phone forgotten. Clinton Voss, the man who commanded industries, sat powerless in economy class while the woman he'd destroyed explained exactly what his decisions had cost. "I don't deserve your help," he said finally. "No," Selena agreed. "You don't. But you're helping anyway. I'm helping Aria. There's a difference." Clinton looked at his daughter, peaceful in Selena's arms, and the full weight of irony crushed down on him. The woman he'd deemed expendable 3 years ago was now the only person keeping his child alive. The expertise he'd reduced to a budget line item was proving irreplaceable. The consequences he'd never bothered to imagine had materialized at 40,000 feet with nowhere to hide. A flight attendant approached, her expression cautious. "We'll be serving dinner soon. Can I bring you anything?" "Water," Selena said. "Room temperature, and crackers if you have them. She might wake up hungry." The attendant nodded and retreated. Clinton cleared his throat. "When we land, I want to make this right." "You can't. I can try." His voice carried desperate sincerity. "The children you mentioned, the 40 who lost care access. I can fund programs, establish grants, whatever it takes." Selena studied him, weighing the offer against 3 years of bitterness. "You think money fixes this?" "No, but it's a start." Clinton leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. "I was wrong, Selena. Not just about the budget cuts, about everything. I built an empire on calculated ruthlessness and convinced myself the human cost was acceptable as long as the numbers worked. Then I had a daughter who needed exactly the kind of specialized care I'd eliminated. And I realized how catastrophically wrong I'd been." "Realizing you were wrong doesn't help the children who suffered in the meantime." "I know." Clinton's voice dropped. "But maybe funding programs now helps the children who are suffering today. Maybe it's too late for me to undo the past, but it's not too late to change what happens next." Aria's eyes fluttered open. She looked up at Selena with unfocused awareness, her small face crumpling toward the tears. "Hey, sweetheart," Selena murmured, immediately shifting into the calming tone she'd used earlier. "You're safe. I've got you." The toddler's eyes found her father sitting beside them. She stared at Clinton for a long moment, then turned her face back into Selena's chest. Clinton's expression shattered. Across the aisle, passengers exchanged glances. The mighty CEO, humbled and helpless while a stranger comforted his child. The woman he'd wronged years ago, showing his daughter more compassion than he'd ever shown her colleagues. Karma had never been more visible. Have you ever watched someone face the consequences of their own decisions? Comment if you think Clinton deserves this, and stay tuned because what happens when they land changes everything. Selena held Aria close, her mind churning through anger, satisfaction, and something more complicated she didn't want to name. Clinton Voss had destroyed her career, dismissed her warnings, and reduced children's lives to spreadsheet calculations. Now he sat beside her, broken and desperate, watching his daughter trust a stranger more than her own father. And despite everything, despite 3 years of struggle, despite the bitterness that still burned in her chest, Selena felt the faintest crack in her armor. Because she'd seen something in the past hour that she hadn't expected. A father who genuinely loved his child, who'd failed her through ignorance rather than malice, who was drowning in guilt and grasping for redemption. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it complicated her anger in ways she wasn't ready to examine. The plane droned on through clouds. Arya dozed fitfully. Clinton sat in silence, processing consequences 3 years in the making. And Selena held the daughter of the man who'd ruined her, wondering how she'd ended up here and what the hell happened next. The water arrived in a plastic cup, condensation beating on the outside. Selena held it to Arya's lips, coaxing the toddler to take small sips. The child's eyes were open now, but unfocused, her small body still recovering from the neurological storm that had torn through her system. "Slow," Selena murmured. "Little sips, sweetheart." Arya drank, coughed weakly, then drank again. Her free hand clutched Selena's sweatshirt in a death grip, knuckles white despite her exhaustion. Clinton watched from inches away, his hands hovering uselessly in the space between them. Every instinct screamed at him to take his daughter, hold her, reassure himself she was alive. But every time he shifted closer, Arya's grip tightened on Selena and her breathing accelerated toward panic. His own daughter flinched away from him. "She doesn't know me," Clinton said, the words scraping out of his throat. "Not really. Catherine handles everything. Baths, bedtime, meltdowns. I'm always working, always traveling. I thought providing for her was enough." Selena set the cup aside. "Children don't need providers. They need parents. I know that now. Knowing and doing are different things." The sharpness in Selena's voice made Clinton wince. He deserved it. Deserved worse. But sitting here watching a stranger comfort his daughter while he remained useless, carved something raw and bleeding inside his chest. "Selena Ward," he said quietly, testing the name on his tongue. "I remember you standing in my office 3 years ago. Do you remember what you said to me?" Selena's jaw tightened. "I said a lot of things that day. You told me I'd regret it. The consequences don't care about quarterly earnings. And here we are." Selena adjusted Arya's position, checking her pulse again, still elevated but steady. "Your regret changes nothing for the children who lost care. Your consequences arrived too late to matter." Clinton opened his mouth to respond, but the words dissolved when Arya suddenly stiffened in Selena's arms. The toddler's eyes went wide, her small body rigid with fresh panic. "Hey, no, Selena said quickly, shifting into the soothing tone that seemed to reach Arya when nothing else could. "You're okay. Stay with me." But Arya's breathing accelerated, shallow gasps that signaled the edge of another episode. Her fingers released Selena's sweatshirt and flew to her own ears, pressing hard, trying to block out stimuli only she could perceive. "What's happening?" Clinton leaned forward, alarm spiking his voice. "Is she seizing again?" Sensory overload, precursor to seizure. Selena's hands moved with practiced efficiency, creating the blanket cocoon again, blocking light and visual chaos. "I need silence. Everyone nearby, stop talking, now." Her command cut through the cabin. Passengers within 3 rows went quiet instantly. Selena began the humming technique again, but Arya fought it this time, her small body twisting, rejecting comfort. The trauma of the earlier seizure had rewired her responses. What had worked before was failing now. "She's not responding," Clinton said, his voice tight with fear. I can see that. Selina's mind raced through alternatives. Pressure points weren't working. Auditory regulation wasn't working. Arya's nervous system was too compromised, too fragile. She needed medical intervention beyond what Selina could provide in a cramped economy seat. She needed equipment they didn't have. Does this flight have a medical kit? Selina asked the hovering flight attendant. Yes, but it's basic. Bandages, aspirin, EpiPens, pediatric sedatives. The attendant's face went pale. I don't think so. Let me check with the captain. She hurried away, leaving Selina alone with a deteriorating toddler and a father on the edge of breakdown. Arya's whimpering intensified. Her small body trembled, muscles tensing in the pattern Selina recognized as pre-seizure activity. Maybe 30 seconds before full collapse, maybe less. Clinton reached for his daughter instinctively. Arya, baby, please, don't touch her, Selina snapped. You'll accelerate the episode. Clinton's hands froze midair, shaking. Then what do I do? There has to be something. There isn't. The words came out harsher than Selina intended. But fear sharpened her edges. Not here. Not without proper medical equipment. If she seizes again this soon after the first episode, it could cause permanent neurological damage. The statement hung between them like a death sentence. Clinton's face drained of color. No, there has to be. You saved her before. I got lucky before. Selina's voice cracked despite her effort to maintain clinical detachment. Her system was stronger. Now she's compromised, exhausted. If she goes into another full seizure, I might not be able to bring her back. The admission cost her everything. Clinton stared at her, then at his daughter, then back at Selina. Are you saying you won't help her? I'm saying I might not be able to. Selina's hands continued working automatically, trying techniques she knew were losing effectiveness. There are limits to what I can do without equipment, without backup, without... She stopped herself, but the unspoken words filled the space anyway. Without the resources you destroyed when you shut down my program. Selina had returned to Voss Industries one final time to collect her personal belongings. Security had escorted her to her former office, a small space on the 38th floor that had been stripped of her nameplate and reassigned before she'd even cleared out her desk. She'd been packing photos and certificates when Clinton Voss appeared in the doorway. Ms. Ward. His voice carried the same cold professionalism as the termination meeting. Security mentioned you were here. I wanted to ensure the transition was proceeding smoothly. Selina had looked up from the box she was filling, her hands full of commendations from families whose children she'd helped. Smoothly, that's one word for it. You received your severance package? Yes, 12 weeks' pay. Very generous for destroying 4 years of work. Clinton's expression hadn't shifted. You're a talented professional. I'm confident you'll land on your feet. Will the children land on their feet? Selina had set down the commendations and turned to face him fully. The ones who were mid-treatment when you pulled funding. The families who were told their appointments were canceled indefinitely. They'll find alternative care. Where? Selina's voice had risen despite her determination to stay composed. Do you have any idea how few pediatric neurology programs exist for low-income families? We were the only option for most of these children. You didn't just shut down a division. You eliminated their only lifeline. Clinton had stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. For a moment, something almost human flickered across his face. Ms. Ward, I understand you're angry. I'm not angry, Selina had interrupted. I'm terrified. Terrified for the children who will have preventable crises because the care they needed no longer exists. terrified for the families who will watch their kids regress because you decided their treatment wasn't profitable enough to matter. Business decisions require, don't. Selena had held up a hand. Don't give me corporate talking points. You made a choice. Own it. When those children end up in emergency rooms because they lost access to preventive care, that's on you. When their families go bankrupt trying to afford private specialists, that's on you. When preventable tragedies become inevitable because you chose profit over people, that's enough, Clinton had said, his voice dropping to something harder. I didn't come here to be lectured on morality by someone who doesn't understand the complexities of running a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. And I don't need a lecture on complexity from someone who's never watched a child seize in their mother's arms because they couldn't afford the care that might have prevented it. Selena had grabbed her box and moved toward the door. You'll regret this decision, Mr. Voss. Maybe not today, maybe not this year. But someday you'll face a situation where expertise matters more than money, and you'll remember the people you threw away. Clinton had stepped aside, his face carved from stone. This conversation is over. It was over 2 weeks ago. Selena had paused at the threshold. But the consequences are just beginning. She'd walked out of Voss Industries for the last time, carrying a box of memories and a burning certainty that Clinton Voss would someday understand exactly what he'd destroyed. She'd never imagined it would happen like this. Selena. Clinton's voice pulled her back to the crisis unfolding in her arms. Please, I'm begging you, whatever you need, whatever it takes, I need equipment that doesn't exist on this plane, Selena said flatly. I need backup medical personnel. I need a pediatric neurologist and a NICU setup. Can your money materialize those at 40,000 feet? Clinton's mouth opened and closed, helpless. Aria's trembling intensified. Her eyes rolled back, showing white. 20 seconds. Maybe less. Selena's mind raced through options, discarding each as quickly as it formed. She could attempt the pressure point technique again, but Aria's system was too sensitized. She could try a different auditory frequency, but the toddler was beyond reaching through sound. She could do nothing. The thought surfaced unbidden, ugly, and tempting. She could let Clinton Voss face the full cost of his decisions. Let him watch his daughter slip away because the expertise that might have saved her had been eliminated for profit margins. Let him understand, finally and irrevocably, that some consequences couldn't be bought off or negotiated away. It would be justice. Cosmic, undeniable justice. Aria whimpered, a sound so small and terrified it shattered something in Selena's chest. This is the moment that defines everything. Does Selena let the daughter pay for the father's sins, or does she fight for a child who can't fight for herself? Selena looked at Aria, 2 years old, autistic, terrified, innocent of every choice that had led to this moment. This child hadn't fired anyone, hadn't reduced human lives to spreadsheet calculations, hadn't chosen a father who valued profit over people. Aria was a victim of her father's ignorance, not an extension of his sins. And Selena had become a pediatric nurse for children exactly like this one. "Hold her arms gently," Selena said. Her voice steady despite the chaos screaming through her mind. "Don't restrain her. Just stabilize so she doesn't hurt herself when the seizure hits." Clinton obeyed instantly, his large hands encircling Aria's small arms with terrified gentleness. "If she seizes, do not panic," Selena continued, her clinical mask slamming into place. "Keep her positioned exactly as I have her. Don't put anything in her mouth. Don't shake her. Watch me and follow my lead." "Okay." Clinton's voice broke. "Okay." Selena took a breath. centering herself in the eye of the storm. Then she did something she'd only attempted twice before, both times in fully equipped emergency rooms with backup personnel. She placed both hands on Arya's chest, fingers spread across the small rib cage, and began applying rhythmic pressure synchronized with the toddler's accelerated heartbeat. A technique her mentor had taught her years ago, one that worked on neurological principles most Western medicine dismissed as pseudoscience: cardiac rhythm reset through external pressure mapping. It required perfect timing, perfect pressure, perfect focus. One mistake, and Arya would seize. Selena blocked out the cabin, the passengers, Clinton's ragged breathing beside her. Her entire world narrowed to the small body in her arms and the frantic heartbeat beneath her palms. Pressure, release, matching Arya's rhythm, then gradually, incrementally slowing it. 10 seconds, 15. Arya's trembling began to ease, her muscles releasing tension degree by degree. 20 seconds. The toddler's breathing deepened, syncing with Selena's pressure rhythm. 25 seconds. Arya's eyes fluttered closed. The rigid panic in her small frame melted into exhausted surrender. 30 seconds. The crisis point passed. Selena maintained the pressure for another full minute, ensuring the neurological reset held, then gradually withdrew her hands. Arya's breathing stayed deep and even. Her pulse, when Selena checked it, had dropped to something approaching normal. The toddler was asleep. Truly, deeply asleep. Selena exhaled, her entire body trembling with adrenaline crash. Clinton stared at her with something approaching religious awe. "What did you just do?" "Something I learned in an underfunded clinic in Dorchester," Selena said quietly. "Something I developed because I didn't have access to the equipment and resources your company used to provide." The irony settled over them both. Clinton's eyes filled with tears he didn't bother to hide. "You saved her again. After everything I did to you, you saved her again." "I saved her because she deserved saving," Selena said. "Not because you deserved my help. I know." Clinton wiped his face with shaking hands. "I know." The flight attendant returned, breathless. "The captain says we can request an emergency landing if—" "Not necessary," Selena interrupted. "She's stabilized, but I need to monitor her continuously until we land. And when we touch down, an ambulance needs to be waiting. Pediatric neurologist, full trauma team." "I'll arrange it," Clinton said immediately, pulling out his phone. Selena watched him make calls, mobilizing resources with the same ruthless efficiency he'd once used to dismantle her program. Money and power deployed to save what mattered most to him. She held Arya close, feeling the toddler's heartbeat steady against her chest, and wondered what the hell happened next, because she'd made a choice in that crisis moment. Not to forgive Clinton Voss. She wasn't ready for that, might never be ready for that. But to save his daughter. Again. And that choice had consequences she hadn't begun to process. The plane droned on through darkening sky. 2 hours to London. 2 hours of holding a child who trusted her while sitting beside a man who'd destroyed her. 2 hours to figure out whether mercy was weakness or the hardest kind of strength. 90 minutes to landing. The cabin had settled into the artificial twilight of transatlantic night flights. Overhead lights dimmed. Passengers dozed or stared at screens, the earlier drama fading into the background hum of travel exhaustion. Selena hadn't moved from her cramped seat. Arya slept fitfully against her chest, the toddler's breathing shallow but steady. Every few minutes, Selena checked the pulse at Arya's tiny wrist, monitoring for irregularities that would signal another crisis. Clinton sat rigid beside them, his eyes locked on his daughter with the intensity of someone afraid blinking might shatter reality. "You should sleep," Selena said quietly. "You look terrible." "I can't." Clinton's voice was hoarse from hours of tension. What if something happens while I'm not watching?" "Then I'll handle it." Same as the last 3 times. The words weren't cruel, just factual. But they landed with the weight of indictment anyway. Clinton's jaw worked. I should be the one holding her. I should be the one she trusts when she's scared. I'm her father. Being a father requires more than biology. Selena adjusted Arya's position, easing pressure on the toddler's diaphragm. It requires showing up, being present, learning what your child needs instead of assuming you already know. Catherine tried to tell me. Clinton's hands clenched on his knees. She wanted me to attend the autism therapy sessions, learn the intervention techniques. I told her I didn't have time, that she was the medical expert, she could handle it. And now? Now I'm sitting next to the woman I fired, watching her do for my daughter what I should have learned to do myself. Clinton's voice cracked. The irony isn't lost on me. Selena said nothing. What was there to say? Arya stirred, her small face scrunching in distress. A whimper escaped her throat, soft, pained, the sound of a child trapped in nightmare territory. Is she okay? Clinton leaned forward, alarm spiking through exhaustion. Dreaming, probably processing the seizure trauma. Selena placed a hand on Arya's back, applying gentle circular pressure. It's normal after neurological episodes. But then Arya's whimper intensified. Her small body went rigid, muscles locking in a pattern Selena had hoped not to see again. "No," Selena breathed. "Not again." "What's happening?" Clinton's voice rose. "She's not seizing, is she? You said she was stable. I said she was stabilized. There's a difference." Selena's mind raced, assessing. Arya's eyes were still closed, her breathing accelerating but not yet critical. This wasn't a full seizure, not yet, but the toddler was teetering on the edge, her compromised nervous system threatening to cascade into another episode. "What do we do?" Clinton reached for Arya, then stopped himself, remembering Selena's earlier warning. "We need ice. Now." Selena's voice cut through the cabin like a command. "Flight attendant." A young man in uniform appeared within seconds. "Yes? Medical emergency. I need ice, crushed if you have it, cubed if you don't. Also, cold compresses, whatever medical cooling packs are in the first aid kit, and a pediatric thermometer. Right away." He disappeared toward the galley. "Ice?" Clinton stared at her. "Why ice?" "Her core temperature's spiking. I can feel it." Selena pressed her palm against Arya's forehead, then her neck. The child was burning up, fever rising fast, a common response to repeated seizure stress, but dangerous if left unchecked. If her temperature climbs above 104, she'll seize again, and this time her system might not recover. Clinton's face went white. The flight attendant returned with a bag of ice and medical supplies. Selena didn't wait for him to set them down. She grabbed the ice and began wrapping handfuls in napkins, creating makeshift cooling packs. "I need 3 more attendants here now," Selena said, her tone brooking no argument. "1 to hold fresh ice packs, 1 to monitor her breathing, 1 to time intervals and call out 30-second marks." "Ma'am, I don't think this child is in critical condition. Either mobilize your crew or explain to investigators why you refused medical direction during a pediatric emergency." Selena's eyes locked on his. "Choose fast." The attendant paled and spoke into his radio. Within minutes, 3 more crew members crowded into the narrow aisle. Selena transformed into a field commander, deploying personnel with clinical precision. "You, hold these ice packs, When I call for fresh ones, swap them out immediately. You, watch her chest, count respirations, tell me if the pattern changes. You, timer, call out every 30 seconds so I can track her response rate. They obeyed instantly, responding to the authority in her voice. Selena positioned ice packs at Arya's pulse points. Neck, wrists, groin, strategically targeting the major arteries to cool blood flow to the brain. She monitored the toddler's color, her breathing, the tension in her small muscles. 30 seconds, the timer called. Arya's rigidity hadn't eased. If anything, the fever was climbing despite the cooling intervention. Clinton watched, helpless and awed, as Selena orchestrated emergency medicine with nothing but ice and determination. This was expertise in its rawest form. No fancy equipment, no corporate resources, just knowledge and skill deployed under impossible pressure. The woman he'd called expendable was proving irreplaceable again. "Swap ice packs," Selena ordered. Fresh ones appeared instantly. Respirations? 28 per minute, shallow. Still elevated. Selena adjusted the packs, increasing coverage. "Come on, sweetheart. Work with me." 60 seconds. Arya's color shifted slightly, the dangerous flush receding by degrees. 90 seconds. The toddler's breathing deepened. Her muscles began to release, tension draining away. 2 minutes. Arya went limp in Selena's arms, not the terrifying limpness of seizure, but the relaxation of fever breaking. Her small chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. Selena exhaled, her shoulders sagging. Crisis passed. For now. The flight attendants exchanged glances, relief and admiration mixing in their expressions. "Thank you," Selena said, her voice gentler now. "You can return to your stations, leave the ice." They dispersed, murmuring among themselves. Clinton hadn't moved. He sat frozen, staring at Selena with an expression somewhere between reverence and devastation. "You just saved her life again," he whispered, "with ice and napkins. I saved her life with expertise you tried to eliminate." Selena removed the warming ice packs and replaced them with fresh ones. "This is what I do, Clinton, what I've always done. What you decided wasn't worth funding." The words settled like ash. The boardroom on the 45th floor had leather chairs, a table that cost more than most cars, and a view of Boston that made Clinton feel like a king surveying his domain. 15 board members sat around that table, waiting for his presentation. Quarterly earnings review, the moment where he either proved his leadership or showed weakness. Clinton had spent 3 weeks preparing. Numbers, projections, restructuring proposals designed to maximize shareholder value. He'd identified the divisions dragging down profit margins, calculated the savings from strategic cuts, prepared the narrative that would turn necessary brutality into fiscal responsibility. "Gentlemen," he'd begun, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his right to make these decisions. "Ladies, our third-quarter results show strong performance in core sectors, but we're carrying dead weight that's impacting our competitive position." He'd clicked to the first slide, a breakdown of division performance measured against profit contribution. The Pediatric Healthcare Initiative operates at a $2.3 million annual loss. 0 revenue generation. No pathway to profitability. In contrast, redirecting those resources to our pharmaceutical partnerships generates a projected $8 million increase in shareholder value. One board member, Gerald Chen, whose daughter was Dr. Yolanda Chen from the healthcare division, had shifted uncomfortably. "Clinton, that program serves vulnerable populations. Isn't there social value beyond profit metrics?" "Social value doesn't pay dividends," Clinton had responded smoothly. "Our fiduciary responsibility is to shareholders, not to charity cases. If we want to support social causes, we can do it through tax-deductible donations, not money-losing divisions. What about the staff? They're specialists with years of experience. They'll receive generous severance packages and strong references. They're talented professionals. They'll land on their feet. Clinton had believed it when he said it. Believed that good people always found new opportunities, that his decisions only affected spreadsheets and organizational charts, not actual human lives. He'd clicked to the next slide, projected earnings growth after restructuring. Eliminating the healthcare initiative, along with 2 other underperforming divisions, positions us for a 12% earnings increase next quarter. Our stock price will rise. Our investors will be rewarded, and will maintain competitive advantage in our core markets. The board had nodded, convinced by numbers that made brutal cuts look like strategic brilliance. Gerald Chen had tried one more time. My daughter works in that division. She says they're making genuine breakthroughs with autistic children. Kids who have no other options. I respect her passion, Clinton had said, his tone suggesting he respected nothing of the sort. But passion doesn't justify financial drain. The children she's helping will find alternative care. The healthcare landscape is full of options. It was a lie. Clinton had known it was a lie even then. But it was a convenient lie, one that let him sleep at night while signing termination papers for 40 employees whose faces he'd never bothered to learn. The motion to approve restructuring and eliminate non-profitable divisions is on the table, he'd said. All in favor? 14 hands had risen. Only Gerald Chen abstained. Motion passes. Clinton had closed his laptop, satisfaction warming his chest. He'd done it. Increased shareholder value, proved his strategic leadership, secured his position for another year. The human cost had seemed abstract, distant, irrelevant. He'd never imagined it would materialize as his daughter dying in his arms, while the woman he'd fired became his only hope for salvation. I remember that boardroom meeting, Clinton said, his voice hollow. I remember Gerald Chen trying to defend your program. I dismissed him, told him passion didn't justify financial drain. Selina kept her eyes on Arya. And now? Now I'd give every dollar I have to undo that decision. Clinton's hands shook. I didn't just fire you, Selina. I didn't just eliminate a division. I destroyed something irreplaceable and convinced myself it didn't matter as long as the numbers looked good. The numbers always look good when you don't count the cost in human lives. I know. Clinton's voice cracked. I stood in that boardroom and reduced children's health care to a line item I could delete. I told myself they'd find alternative care, but I never bothered to check if that was true. I never asked what happened to those 40 children after I pulled their funding. I just moved on to the next quarter. Selina finally looked at him. Want to know what happened to them? Clinton's throat worked, but no sound emerged. 6 of them ended up in emergency rooms within 3 months. Preventable crises that became tragedies because they lost access to intervention care. 2 families went bankrupt trying to afford private specialists. 1 mother quit her job to provide full-time care for her son because the programs that had been helping him no longer existed. Selina's voice stayed level, but fury burned beneath each word. You didn't just fire me, Clinton. You fired every child who could have benefited from the work you destroyed. The accusation hit Clinton like a physical blow. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't care enough to know. Selina adjusted the ice packs on Arya's small body. There's a difference between ignorance and willful blindness. You chose not to ask about consequences because knowing would have made you uncomfortable. Clinton looked at his daughter, burning with fever in a stranger's arms, and something inside him shattered. He'd built an empire on ruthless efficiency, fired thousands without hesitation, made decisions that destroyed careers and dismantled lives, all in service of profit margins and shareholder value. He'd convinced himself that business was separate from morality, that difficult choices required emotional detachment, that his success justified any human cost. And now he sat powerless at 40,000 feet, watching the woman he'd discarded save the child he loved more than his own life. Clinton broke. Not quietly, not with dignity. He doubled over, clutching his head, and sobbed, raw, ugly sounds that drew stares from nearby passengers. 3 years of consequences he'd never bothered to imagine crashed down on him all at once. The children who'd suffered, the families bankrupted, the woman whose purpose he'd stripped away because her expertise didn't generate revenue. Aria, small and fragile and burning with fever because her father had been too arrogant to learn what she needed. "I'm sorry," Clinton choked out between sobs. "God, Selena, I'm so sorry. I destroyed your career, robbed children of care, convinced myself it was just business. And now my own daughter is paying the price for my ignorance." Selena watched him break, her expression unreadable. "I can't buy my way out of this," Clinton continued, his voice ragged. "I can't negotiate it away. I can't delegate it to someone else. I have to sit here and face what I've done, and there's no escape. Can he be forgiven, or do sins run too deep?" Aria whimpered in her sleep, and Clinton looked up, tears streaming down his face, watching Selena immediately shift focus to his daughter. Even now, even after everything, she put the child's needs above her own justified anger. "Why are you helping her?" Clinton asked. "After what I did to you, why do you keep saving her?" Selena was quiet for a long moment, then, "Because she's not you. Because she's an innocent child who didn't choose her father's sins. Because I became a nurse to help children exactly like her, and I won't let your mistakes cost her the care she deserves." She met his eyes, and Clinton saw no forgiveness there. But he saw something more complicated, a woman who'd chosen compassion over bitterness, not because he deserved it, but because a 2-year-old did. "Your money can't fix this," Selena said quietly. "Your apologies can't undo the damage. But if you actually want to make something right, you'll learn what your daughter needs and become the father she deserves. Not the provider, not the CEO, the father." Clinton nodded, unable to speak past the grief choking his throat. The plane droned on toward London, toward landing, toward whatever came next. And Clinton Voss, the man who'd built an empire on ruthless calculation, clutched his knees and wept for consequences he could finally no longer ignore. 1 hour to landing. The cabin had grown warmer as passengers woke from fitful sleep, stretching and checking phones, preparing for arrival. Morning light filtered through window shades, casting the economy section in shades of gold and shadow. Aria slept peacefully now, her fever broken, her small body relaxed against Selena's chest. The toddler's breathing came steady and deep, her fingers loosely curled around a strand of Selena's hair. Clinton hadn't stopped watching them. His eyes were red-rimmed, face blotchy from tears he'd stopped trying to hide. He looked diminished in ways that had nothing to do with the cramped seat, like a man who'd finally seen himself clearly and hated what he found. "Selena," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" She didn't look at him. "You've been asking me things for hours." "Not asking, begging." Clinton's voice was raw, stripped of every corporate polish. "Will you teach me how to help her, how to recognize when she's struggling, how to be what she needs instead of what I think I should be?" Selena finally turned her head, studying his face. "You want a crash course in parenting your autistic daughter? 1 hour before we land?" I want whatever you're willing to give me. Clinton leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees in a posture of supplication. I know I don't deserve your time. I know an hour won't undo years of ignorance. But Arya deserves a father who understands her, and right now I'm failing her in ways I didn't even know were possible. The honesty in his voice gave Selena pause. She looked down at Arya, then back at Clinton. This isn't about you earning redemption. You understand that, right? I'm not interested in making you feel better about your failures. I know. If I teach you, it's for her, so she has a father who can actually help when she's in crisis. I know, Clinton repeated. That's all I'm asking for. Selena held his gaze for another long moment, weighing sincerity against years of justified anger. Then she gave a single sharp nod. Pay attention, she said. I'm only explaining this once. Relief washed over Clinton's face, so profound it looked like physical pain releasing. Selena shifted Arya slightly, positioning the toddler so Clinton could see her face clearly. First lesson, learn to read her body before she reaches crisis. Autistic children telegraph distress through microsignals most people miss. Watch her hands. Clinton leaned closer, his eyes fixed on his daughter's small fingers. When she's calm, her hands are loose, relaxed, like now. Selena gently touched Arya's palm. When she starts getting overstimulated, her fingers will curl inward, tight fists. That's your first warning sign. Fists mean overstimulation, Clinton murmured, committing it to memory. Second warning, breathing pattern changes. She'll start taking shallow, rapid breaths through her mouth instead of deep ones through her nose. Third warning, she'll seek pressure, pressing her hands over her ears, pushing her face into furniture, trying to create sensory barriers. Clinton pulled out his phone and opened the Notes app. You're taking notes? Selena asked, surprised despite herself. I told you, I'm listening now. Clinton's fingers moved across the screen, typing everything she said. What comes after the 3 warning signs? Selena felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the faint crack of possibility. After those 3 signs, you have maybe 2 minutes before she escalates into meltdown or seizure. That's your intervention window. Selena demonstrated on Arya's sleeping form, her touch gentle and practiced. Pressure points here behind the ears, firm but not hard. Circular motion. It stimulates the vagus nerve, helps regulate her nervous system. Clinton's fingers hovered near Arya's head, not quite touching. Like this? Here, I'll guide you. Selena took his hand, the first time she'd willingly touched him since he'd destroyed her career, and positioned his fingers correctly. Feel that soft spot behind her earlobe? That's your target. Gentle circles. Count to 30. Clinton's hand trembled as he followed her instruction, his large fingers awkward but careful on his daughter's tiny head. Arya stirred, making a soft sound but didn't wake. She's not pulling away, Clinton whispered, wonder creeping into his voice. She usually flinches when I touch her. Because you usually touch her when you're tense. Children read emotional states through physical contact. If you're anxious, she feels it and mirrors it. Selena released his hand, letting him continue the motion alone. Calm yourself first, then touch her. She'll feel the difference. Clinton nodded, his breathing slowing deliberately as he maintained the gentle pressure behind Arya's ear. Across the aisle, the woman who'd been watching their drama unfold for hours leaned toward her husband again, but this time her whisper carried warmth instead of judgment. He's actually trying to learn, her husband nodded. About time. Other passengers had noticed the shift too. The teenage girl who'd tried to film earlier now watched with open admiration. A businessman, 2 rows up, gave Selina a subtle thumbs up when she glanced his way. The cabin's emotional temperature had changed. Earlier, they'd witnessed a CEO's downfall. Now they were watching something more complicated. A father's desperate attempt to bridge the gap between who he'd been and who his daughter needed him to become. Clinton kept his fingers moving in steady circles, his focus absolute. "Can I ask about her triggers, the things that set her off?" Loud, sudden noises, crowded spaces with too much visual chaos, scratchy fabrics, that's why she clings to my sweatshirt instead of your silk shirt. Unexpected touch from people she doesn't trust yet. Selina paused, letting that last one land. She needs predictability, routine, advance warning before transitions. I had no idea. Clinton's voice cracked. Catherine tried to tell me, but I was always too busy to listen. Too focused on the next meeting, the next deal. I convinced myself that providing financially was enough, that Catherine could handle the day-to-day while I built security for Arya's future. You can't build security for a child you don't understand. I'm learning that now. Clinton's hand stilled on Arya's head. Catherine and I are barely speaking anymore. She's exhausted from carrying the entire parenting load while I fly around the world pretending I'm building something important. This trip, she almost didn't let me take Arya alone. She knew I wasn't ready, but I insisted, told her I needed to bond with my daughter. He laughed bitterly. Bond. Like it's a business meeting I could schedule between conference calls. Selina heard the genuine anguish beneath his words. Where is Catherine now? London, presenting research at a pediatric neurology conference. Clinton met Selina's eyes. She's brilliant. One of the leading researchers on autism intervention therapies. The irony of being married to an expert while remaining catastrophically ignorant about my own daughter's condition isn't lost on me. Why didn't you learn from her? Pride. The admission cost him. She's the medical expert. I'm the businessman. I convinced myself we each had our roles, our separate spheres of competence. I didn't want to admit I needed to learn from her because that would mean acknowledging I didn't already know everything. Ever avoided asking for help because of pride? Drop guilty if that's you. Selina absorbed this, seeing Clinton in new dimensions. Not just the ruthless CEO who'd destroyed her career, but a man who'd built walls between himself and the people he loved, who'd confused providing with parenting, who was drowning in exhaustion he'd been too proud to acknowledge. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it complicated him in ways that made pure hatred harder to maintain. Your daughter doesn't care about your pride, Selina said quietly. She cares whether you show up, whether you learn her language instead of forcing her to speak yours. I'm trying to learn now, 3 years too late. I know. Clinton looked down at Arya, sleeping peacefully between them. But maybe not too late to start becoming the father she deserves. A flight attendant approached, the same young man who'd helped during the fever crisis. "Ma'am," he said to Selina, his voice respectful, "the captain wanted me to tell you there's an ambulance waiting at Heathrow. Full pediatric trauma team, per your specifications. Thank you." And I wanted to say, he glanced at Clinton, then back to Selina. "What you did today was incredible. I've been flying for 6 years and I've never seen anyone handle a medical emergency like that. You saved this little girl's life multiple times." Selina felt heat rise in her cheeks. I was just doing my job, with no equipment, no backup, in a cramped economy seat. The attendant smiled. "That's not just a job, that's a calling." He moved on before Selina could respond. Clinton's son cleared his throat. "He's right, you know. What you did was extraordinary." "Don't," Selina warned. "I'm not trying to flatter you, I'm stating fact." Clinton's voice was quiet but firm. "You saved Arya, with nothing but expertise and determination. The same expertise I eliminated because I couldn't see past profit margins. The same expertise Catherine begged me to value when I was cutting your program. Selina's head snapped toward him. Catherine knew about the cuts? She fought against them. Clinton's face tightened with shame. She presented data showing the program's impact, argued that some investments have value beyond financial return. I overruled her, told her to stay in her lane and let me handle business decisions. The revelation hit Selina like cold water. Catherine Voss, renowned neurologist, autism researcher, the woman who could have been an ally, had tried to save the program, and Clinton had silenced her. Does she know? Selina asked. That the woman you fired is the one who saved your daughter today? Not yet, but I'll tell her when we land. Clinton drew a shaky breath. I'll tell her everything, how wrong I was, how your expertise proved irreplaceable, how the consequences I ignored came home in the worst possible way. Will she say, I told you so? She'll be too relieved that Aria survived to bother with recriminations. Clinton's mouth twisted. Catherine's better than I deserve. Always has been. The businessman, 2 rows up, stood and made his way over, his expression awkward but determined. Excuse me, I don't mean to intrude, but I had to say something. Selina looked up, wary. I'm a pediatrician, the man said. I've been listening to you work for the past 4 hours. The techniques you used, the cardiac rhythm reset, the vagus nerve stimulation, the thermal regulation protocol, that's advanced intervention therapy. Where did you train? Community clinic in Dorchester, Selina said. We couldn't afford standard equipment, so we developed alternatives. Necessity as innovation. The pediatrician nodded approvingly. Have you published your methods? Because what I witnessed today should be taught in medical schools. Selina blinked, caught off guard. I haven't had time to write papers. I've been too busy actually treating patients. You should make time. The pediatrician pulled out a business card. I teach at Boston Children's Hospital. If you're ever interested in presenting your techniques, we'd be honored to host you. He handed her the card and returned to his seat, leaving Selina staring at embossed letters that spelled out credentials and opportunities. Clinton watched her face. You're brilliant, he said quietly. I was too blind to see it 3 years ago, but it's undeniable now. The program I destroyed wasn't expendable. It was groundbreaking, and you were leading work that could have transformed pediatric care. Selina tucked the card into her pocket, emotions churning too fast to name. Around them, passengers had started gathering belongings, preparing for landing. But several paused to catch Selina's eye, offering smiles, nods of respect, silent acknowledgement of what she'd done. Clinton noticed their attention shifting to Selina, bypassing him entirely. For a man accustomed to commanding every room he entered, the reversal was stark. But instead of bristling, he sat back and let it happen. Let Selina have the recognition she'd earned. Let the passengers see her expertise, her compassion, her strength. Let himself fade into the background for the first time in his professional life. The irony was complete. The CEO reduced to observer while the woman he'd fired became the hero of the cabin. And Clinton Voss, architect of his own humiliation, accepted it without protest. Thank you, he said softly, the words meant for Selina alone. For saving her, for teaching me, for showing me what I destroyed and what I need to become. Selina didn't respond immediately. She looked down at Aria, then out of the window at clouds beginning to thin as they descended toward the London. Don't thank me yet, she finally said. Thank me when you actually change, when you show up for therapy sessions, when you learn her triggers and respond before crisis hits, when you become a father instead of a provider. I will, Clinton promised. I swear I will. Whether he could keep that promise remained to be seen. But for the first time since she'd pushed through that economy curtain hours ago, Selena allowed herself to believe he might actually try. The seatbelt sign chimed. The captain's voice crackled through speakers, announcing final descent into Heathrow. Arya's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on Selena's face. The toddler smiled, small, tired, but genuine. And Clinton Voss, watching his daughter smile at the woman he'd wronged, understood with perfect clarity what redemption would actually require. Not money, not apologies, not grand gestures, just showing up, learning, changing, every single day for the rest of his life. The landing gear groaned as it locked into position. Through the window, London sprawled beneath them. Gray skies, the Thames snaking through urban density, Heathrow's runways gleaming wet from recent rain. Selena felt the descent in her stomach, the slight pressure change that made Arya stir against her chest. The toddler's eyes opened halfway, unfocused and sleepy, her small hand tightening around the fabric of Selena's sweatshirt. "Almost there, sweetheart," Selena murmured. Clinton leaned forward, his face tense. "What happens when we land? Will they take her straight to the hospital?" "The trauma team will assess her on site, then decide if transport is necessary." Selena kept her voice calm, clinical. "Based on her current stability, they'll likely run tests at the airport medical facility before deciding next steps. And you'll stay with her during the assessment?" Selena met his eyes. "That's not my—" "Please." Clinton's voice cracked. "She trusts you. If she wakes up surrounded by strangers, she'll panic. I'm asking you to stay, at least until Catherine arrives." The request was reasonable. Selena knew it. Arya had been through hell, and medical procedures would be terrifying for a traumatized autistic toddler who'd bonded with Selena over hours of crisis. "Until Catherine arrives," Selena agreed. "Then I'm gone." Relief flooded Clinton's face. "Thank you." The plane descended through cloud cover, the cabin filling with that peculiar pre-landing tension. Passengers gathered bags, powered off devices prepared for the transition from suspended animation to ground reality. Clinton unbuckled and stood abruptly, his tall frame drawing attention in the crowded aisle. "Excuse me," he called toward the front of the cabin. "Flight attendant?" The young man who'd helped during the crises appeared within seconds. "Sir, I need to use the intercom. It's important." The attendant hesitated. "Sir, we're in final descent. Everyone needs to remain seated. This will take 30 seconds. Clinton's voice carried authority, but for once it wasn't commanding. It was pleading. "Please, I need to say something before we land." The attendant looked uncertain, then nodded. "Make it quick." Clinton moved toward the front, and the attendant handed him the intercom receiver. The cabin went quiet, passengers craning their necks to see what was happening. Clinton's hand trembled as he brought the receiver to his mouth. He cleared his throat, the sound crackling through speakers throughout the aircraft. "Good morning. For those who don't know me, my name is Clinton Voss. I'm the man in first class whose daughter collapsed 4 hours ago." Murmurs rippled through the cabin. "I need to publicly acknowledge someone." Clinton's voice was rough, stripped of corporate polish. "Selena Ward, a pediatric nurse sitting in economy, saved my daughter's life. Not once, not twice. 4 separate times during this flight she intervened when my daughter went into medical crisis." Selena felt every eye in economy turn toward her. Heat flooded her face. "Ms. Ward had every reason to ignore my daughter's distress," Clinton continued. 3 years ago, I fired her. eliminated her entire department at my company because I valued profit over people. She built programs that helped vulnerable children, and I destroyed them with a signature because the numbers didn't look good on a spreadsheet. The cabin went dead silent. Today, the expertise I called expendable proved irreplaceable. The woman I dismissed as non-essential saved the most essential thing in my world, my child. She did it with no equipment, no resources, nothing but knowledge and compassion I was too blind to value. Clinton's voice broke, but he pushed through. Selena Ward is the reason my daughter is alive. She is brilliant, dedicated, and a better human being than I will ever be. I owe her a debt I can never repay, and I needed everyone on this flight to know that the woman I wronged years ago became my only hope when everything else failed. He paused, drawing a shaky breath. Thank you, Selena, for your expertise, your compassion, your mercy. You saved Aria despite what I did to you, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that grace. Clinton handed the receiver back to the stunned flight attendant and returned to his seat as the plane touched down, wheels screeching against runway. Applause erupted through the cabin. First a few passengers, then dozens, then the entire plane. People craned to see Selena, offering smiles, nods, respect. Selena sat frozen, Aria sleeping against her chest, unable to process what had happened. Clinton had just publicly confessed his failures to 300 strangers, had acknowledged her expertise in front of witnesses, had humbled himself completely. The plane taxied toward the gate, applause gradually fading into the rustle of passengers preparing to deplane. But people kept looking at Selena with admiration, kept offering small gestures of acknowledgement. That was, Selena started, then stopped, unsure what to say. Overdue, Clinton finished quietly. About 3 years overdue. The clinic had been understaffed, underfunded, and overwhelmed when 5-year-old Marcus Chen arrived in his mother's arms, seizing violently. His mother, a single parent working 2 jobs, had missed his medication doses because she couldn't afford the prescription refill. The clinic had no neurologist on staff, no advanced imaging equipment, no pediatric intensive care unit. They had Selena Ward and a supply closet that would have made a hospital administrator weep. Marcus had been seizing for 12 minutes when his mother burst through the doors. By medical standards, they had 3 minutes before permanent brain damage became likely. Selena had taken one look at the boy's symptoms, assessed available resources in 15 seconds, and made a decision that would have gotten her fired from any corporate healthcare facility. She'd used a modified vagus nerve stimulation technique, pressure points combined with thermal regulation, that wasn't FDA approved, wasn't taught in medical schools, wasn't covered by any standard protocol. It was pure innovation born of desperation and necessity. Selena had worked on Marcus for 8 minutes, using her hands and ice packs and knowledge that existed nowhere except her experience. The clinic director had stood by, watching, too stunned to intervene. Marcus's seizure had broken at minute 20. Against every medical expectation, he'd stabilized with no apparent neurological damage. His mother had wept. The clinic director had stared at Selena like she'd performed a miracle. "Where did you learn that technique?" he'd asked. "I didn't learn it," Selena had answered, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. "I invented it because I had to, because children in places like this don't have access to the equipment and specialists they need, so we make do with what we have." That moment had crystallized everything. The work Selena was doing in underfunded clinics wasn't just healthcare. It was innovation forced by resource scarcity, expertise sharpened by necessity. Clinton Voss had destroyed her corporate position, but he'd inadvertently created something more valuable, a practitioner who could save lives with nothing but knowledge and determination. The ambulance waited on the tarmac, paramedics standing ready with equipment Selena would have killed to have during the flight. Clinton carried Arya down the aircraft stairs, the toddler awake now, but clinging to him with newfound trust. Selena followed, her legs unsteady after hours of immobility. The pediatric team descended immediately, their assessment swift and thorough. Arya's vitals were stable. No immediate transport necessary. They'd run tests in the airport medical facility and monitor her for 2 hours before releasing her to parental care. Catherine Voss arrived 17 minutes later, her heels clicking sharply across the medical facility floor. She was striking, late 30s, black, her hair pulled into a professional bun, her eyes sharp with intelligence and barely contained panic. "Where is she?" Catherine demanded, her voice tight. "Where's Arya?" "She's stable," Clinton said quickly, stepping forward. "She's okay, Catherine. Catherine pushed past him and stopped dead when she saw Selena holding Arya. The toddler nestled peacefully against a stranger's chest. "Who are you?" Catherine's tone wasn't hostile, just confused. "Selena Ward," Selena said quietly. "I'm a pediatric nurse. I helped Arya during the flight." Recognition flashed across Catherine's face. "Selena Ward, from the Pediatric Healthcare Initiative? You remember. I tried to save your program." Catherine's voice went soft with old regret. "I presented data, argued the value. Clinton overruled me. He told me." Catherine looked at her husband, then at Selena, then at her daughter sleeping peacefully in a stranger's arms. "What happened on that flight?" Clinton told her. "Everything. The seizures, the fever, Selena's interventions, the techniques that had saved Arya's life repeatedly." Catherine listened with the focused intensity of a trained researcher, her expression shifting through shock, relief, anger, and something more complicated. When Clinton finished, Catherine turned to Selena. "You saved my daughter with pressure point therapy and ice packs? And cardiac rhythm reset? And vagus nerve stimulation? Techniques I've been trying to get approved for clinical trials for 2 years." Catherine's voice carried awe. "You deployed them in field conditions with no backup?" "I didn't have a choice." Catherine stepped closer, her eyes intense. "How effective was the cardiac rhythm reset on a 2-year-old autistic patient in active seizure state? 90-second intervention window. Full neurological stabilization. That's," Catherine stopped, processing. "That's a 50% faster result than our controlled lab settings. How?" "Necessity," Selena said simply. "When you can't afford to fail, you don't." Ever innovated under impossible pressure? Drop "been there" if you felt this. Catherine absorbed this, seeing Selena with the eyes of a fellow professional rather than someone who'd worked for her husband's company. "We need to talk," she said. "About your techniques, about clinical applications, about—" "Catherine," Clinton interrupted gently. "Let's get Arya settled first." Catherine nodded, refocusing on her daughter. Selena transferred Arya into Catherine's arms, and the toddler went willingly, recognizing her mother's scent and voice. "Mama," Arya murmured, her small hand reaching for Catherine's face. "I'm here, baby," Catherine whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Mama's here." Medical staff ushered Catherine and Arya into an examination room. Clinton started to follow, then stopped and turned back to Selena. "Don't leave yet," he said. "Please, I need to ask you something." Selena crossed her arms. "I'm listening." Clinton drew a breath, steadying himself. "I'm establishing a new foundation. focused entirely on pediatric autism research and intervention programs. Fully funded, no profit requirements, no corporate oversight. I want you to lead it." Selena blinked. "What?" "The Arya Voss Foundation for Autism Care. $2 million annual budget to start, scaling to $5 million by year 3. You'd have complete autonomy to design programs, hire specialists, implement the techniques you've developed. No boardroom approval required. No one questioning the value of work that doesn't generate revenue." The offer hung between them, enormous and complicated. "You're offering me a job," Selena said slowly, "running the exact type of program you eliminated 3 years ago. I'm offering you the resources to do what you've always done, without the barriers I put in your way." Clinton's voice was steady, sincere. "This isn't charity. It's not pity. It's recognition that you're doing groundbreaking work that deserves proper support." Selena studied his face, searching for manipulation, for hidden agendas. "Why now?" "Because Arya would be dead if not for you. Because 40 children lost access to care when I shut down your program. Because I finally understand that some work matters more than profit margins." Clinton met her eyes. "I can't undo what I did, but I can fund what you're doing now and make sure other children get the care Arya received today. You think money fixes this? No. But money can fund programs that help children who need exactly what you provide. It's not redemption, it's accountability." Selena was quiet for a long moment. "I'd have full autonomy, no interference. Complete. You'd report to a board that includes Catherine, 2 independent pediatric specialists, and you. I'd be a donor, not a decision-maker. And if I say no, then I'll fund someone else to do similar work, and respect your decision." Clinton's voice was firm. "But no one else has your expertise, your innovation, your dedication. You've spent 3 years developing techniques in under-resourced clinics that outperform what's being done in top-tier hospitals. Children deserve access to that." Selena looked toward the examination room where Arya was being assessed. She thought about Marcus Chen, seizing in his mother's arms, about the 40 children who'd lost care when Clinton cut funding, about the toddler on a plane who'd survived because Selena had learned to make miracles from nothing. "I accept," she said quietly. "Not for you. For children like Arya who need care more than their parents need profit." Clinton nodded, something like relief washing over his face. "Fair enough." The examination room door opened. Catherine emerged, Arya drowsy but stable in her arms. The toddler's eyes found Selena immediately. "Lena," Arya murmured, reaching toward her. Catherine's eyebrows rose. "She's talking? She never talks to strangers." "She bonded with Selena during the flight," Clinton explained. Arya squirmed in her mother's arms, clearly wanting Selena. Catherine looked uncertain, then carefully transferred her daughter over. Arya curled immediately into Selena's chest, her small hand gripping the now familiar sweatshirt, her breathing settling into the rhythm she'd learned over hours of crisis. Catherine watched her daughter find comfort with Selena, and understanding dawned in her eyes. "You didn't just save her life," she said softly. "You connected with her in ways most people never do." "She's an incredible kid," Selena said, stroking Arya's hair. "Smart, resilient. She just needs people who understand how she experiences the world." Clinton stood apart, watching his daughter cling to Selena instead of reaching for him. The woman he'd fired, the expertise he'd dismissed, the value he'd failed to recognize, all of it crystallized in this moment. Arya trusted Selena more than her own father. Not because Selena had money or power or corporate influence, but because she'd shown up with compassion, knowledge, and unwavering dedication when Arya needed her most. Clinton looked at Catherine, then at Selena, then at his daughter sleeping peacefully in the arms of someone who'd proven what he should have known all along. Wealth builds empires. But compassion saves lives. And sometimes the people you cast aside become the ones who show you what truly matters. Subscribe if this moved you. What's your takeaway? Drop it in the comments. The Arya Voss Foundation for Autism Care opened its doors in a renovated facility in Dorchester. Selena Ward stood in the lobby, surrounded by state-of-the-art equipment, a team of specialists she'd handpicked, and families whose children would finally receive the care they deserved. Clinton Voss attended the opening ceremony but stayed in the background, letting Selena take the spotlight. Arya, now 2.5, sat on Selena's hip during the ribbon cutting, comfortable and calm. Catherine Voss presented research showing that Selena's techniques were being adopted by clinics across 4 states, with measurable improvements in patient outcomes. And Selena Ward, the woman who'd been called expendable, who'd rebuilt her career from wreckage, who'd saved a life at 40,000 feet with nothing but expertise and compassion, looked at the children streaming through the doors and knew she was finally doing the work she was meant to do, with the resources she deserved, and the recognition that had always been overdue. Wealth had built the facility, but compassion would fill it with life.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.